So, Rick, I mean, we've seen, again, a lot of decent ratings for the DNC. Of course, more celebrities around. That's not uncommon either for Democrats. They've pulled out everybody from Bill Clinton to the Obamas, so political celebrities, as well as, in the music world as well. And listen, even people can laugh about that. I think people can agree. I think Sean Hannity said last night, we can all agree Stevie Wonder's great. That's wonderful. Right. Americans can agree on that. And that's true. But Walz last night, he showed a different side of himself, and I think it was done certainly intentionally. Everything is here. He showed the football coach, Walz, not the dancing on the stage, kind of this goofy Midwesterner Walz, but a different kind of Walz who we've been told exists. In fact, by his former opponent and Republican opponent said, listen, don't take this guy as just this goofy, nice Midwesterner. He is a pit bull when he needs to be. And I think we got a taste of that last night, which is good for people like J.D. Vance to see, but also for voters to see and Republicans to see.
Yeah, look, this is a distraction convention all week. They're not talking about policy. They're trying to entertain you with John Legend and entertainers and celebrities and Oprah Winfrey, who got up and said she's an independent. To which, if we had a real press corps, somebody would have said, who is the last Republican that you voted for? Because you seem to have endorsed every single Democrat over the last 20 years. She's not an independent, as much as Tim Walz is not a coach. He's actually an assistant coach. And yet they've completely papered over that. So I think the reality is they're not talking about the two wars. They're not talking about inflation. They're not talking about the open borders because they really can't distance themselves from the Biden-Harris ticket. Over the last 3.5 years, they have literally driven our country into chaos, multiple wars where we didn't have any wars. We had a border that was secure, and now it's completely open. We had gas prices that were cheaper, grocery prices that were cheaper. And what do you expect? They can't talk about these issues. And so what they do is they bring in their old playbook of the celebrities and the distraction and the funny one-liners from all their politicians. But I think that people who turn into a convention who aren't normally political, they're looking to talk, hear from people about what politics is all about. They want to know, where do you stand on these political issues? They're not tuning in to be entertained. And so that's where I think the Democrats have completely collapsed in their messaging because they're only emphasizing that they can't talk about the substance.
I think to me it was that Bill Clinton, who has got a unique gift of kind of taking very liberal policies, and even though the party moved even much further left than when he was president, you can look at that just based off his policies. But he didn't really talk about anything that happened under Biden. I mean, at all. I mean, he talked a little bit about Obama in those years, but I mean, it's just like you said, they're not even trying to defend the Biden administration, but they're hoping we'll say it like that instead of calling it what it really is, which is the Harris administration. And she is, I think Mike Pompeo was just on calling her. She is an incumbent. It's not just a statement to say that she's the incumbent vice president now, leading candidate for president.
Yeah, certainly her policies are on the ballot and they're running from the policies. I thought Bill Clinton last night, really the story is that he was uninspiring. I thought that was a collapse of Bill Clinton. I didn't see him really invigorate the crowd. And I think the other story too is you had people like Pete Buttigieg, who Mayor Pete, he showed up and his speech was all about himself and how great he was and how great his family was. And, he had a couple of one-liners that were supposed to be funny. But the reality is they're not talking about Kamala Harris or Tim Walz's policies. They can't. They cannot justify why they funded Iran, and then Iran turned around and funded a disastrous war, which is getting worse. And let's highlight one thing. The uncommitted Arab women who were promised a speaking spot and then were told at the last minute, you don't get a speaking spot. They announced they cannot support Harris. I think last night it was obvious that Kamala Harris is not going to win Michigan. She can't. There's a total collapse of her support in Michigan. And so I think we're missing some of these really key moments on the substance.
Yeah, well, and I think, listen, we have time because obviously the DNC is taking up, it takes up, I can't imagine most of our folks, even I, and this is part of my job, Rick, I mean, I can't literally do my job for the ACLJ and sit there for the hours of just kind of filler that I feel like I'm getting to get to the speech that is still really just a lot of filler. And most people are going to consume it in sound bites and comments and by people like us. And it's like, you know, it can look good, but did it mean anything? And I think what you're saying is like these backstories are going to be really important, especially next week, because we still have that time to tell these stories. I mean, it's about a month till people start early voting in some states, which is wild, but we still have time to like tell those stories about Michigan, the stories that are not going to be on the front page right now.
Yeah, we've got a lot of time. And don't forget something that happened this week that I think was, I don't know exactly what's going to happen on Friday, but when RFK Jr. announces that he's got a major announcement on Friday, make no mistake, he didn't plan that for Thursday because he realized this is the Democratic convention. He planned that for the morning after the Democratic convention to completely change the narrative. I believe the race could be reset. If Kennedy drops out on Friday and comes close to complimenting Donald Trump or endorses Donald Trump, that is a disaster for this whole week long of entertainment at the Democratic convention because they just got wiped out on substance.
Let me ask you that, because this is what we've been talking about here. If something close to that happens, right? If it gets to an endorsement, I think it's 100% almost wipeout. You take coverage of the DNC that would have been 100% of the news through the next 3-4 days, at least through the weekend shows and maybe even half of next week. And you wipe all of that out because the news knows one thing. One, they got to get ratings. You know who gets ratings? Kennedy's and Trump's especially. And if that happens the day after, it doesn't even matter what Harris does tonight. I mean, really, seriously, I mean, you don't want to always plan for that because, again, we're not 100% sure what's going to happen tomorrow. But if it does, and if anybody's listening and worried about it, if you can do that, it is an unbelievable move to kind of take their bump and completely make it disappear.
I think it also shows just how silly their week was. You know, we spent a lot of time saying, oh my gosh, the Democratic roll call was so much better than the Republican roll call, to which I was like, maybe, but that doesn't matter. We have two wars going on. And then it was, look at all these celebrities and John Legend is doing a Prince cover. And, I was like, well, that's kind of interesting, but still, you're not talking about inflation. And now, what they're trying to do is say that, well, we're full of joy. The Democrats have a convention full of joy. And I'm thinking, well, on Friday, you're not going to be too joyful.
Killing babies outside for free. As a really, really joyful convention. I think on the first day of their free killing bus, they killed 25 babies.
It was 25,
yeah.
Right? And Rick, also that question that we've seen, not only was there no substance, but there was an Orwellian theme throughout this entire convention where they're redefining terms before our eyes.
Got redefined.
The very first two nights, it was abortion. They expanded the concept of abortion from a procedure that ends a pregnancy and a life to make abortion all reproductive health care. And then we see how they're trying to redefine the term freedom. There is a little bit of a sinister edge to this entire DNC mixed in with all the pomp and circumstance and entertainment.
How about the phrase gender affirming care for children who go through drastic surgeries and hormone replacements? That's called gender affirming care. This is akin to calling a place where you get to break immigration laws and be protected and not be prosecuted, and suddenly we call that a sanctuary city.
No, I mean, listen, I can't wait, Rick, to get your thoughts. Maybe we get Rick back on tomorrow if he's able, on the Harris speech to see if they realize they've got to go a little deeper, if they think this is their best, because they know something is possibly coming Friday too. I mean, they're not idiots. They know. And they've got it. So do they have to say something, do something that keeps them in the news cycle at least? Because if it's just a blah speech, she's given a lot of blah speeches that are not very great, that are even overshadowed by the previous speeches. The media is going to move right on to Kennedy's because Kennedy's get a lot more ratings.